Good morning. It's morning for me. It's Monday morning. When you watch this video, it could be a good afternoon for you. It could be a good evening for you. I really just want to give you, your textbook provides lots of examples about the difference between conceptual definitions and operational definitions of variables. I want to give you just another example to kind of explain it to you in this way, verbally. And then I'll quickly cover some of the validity and reliability content, and then I'll tell you about your assignments for the week. So a conceptual definition of a variable is really like the standard definition of a variable. So for example, if we think about mindfulness, so mindfulness is becoming a very popular construct in the field of psychology, and that's because there's a growing body of research showing that there are multiple benefits associated with mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. So the first question that we might ask when we're thinking about mindfulness is, well, what is mindfulness? What is it? What's the standard definition or the conceptual definition of mindfulness? The definition of mindfulness that's typically used as a conceptual definition is the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness cultivated by paying attention in a specific way that is in the present moment and as non-reactively, as non-judgmentally, and as open-heartedly as possible. And we heard that term non-judgmental twice, so that must be an important feature of mindfulness. So that's a definition developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn. It's used pervasively throughout the mindfulness literature in the field of psychology. So that's the standard definition, which is conceptual in nature. It tells you essentially, what is this variable? It doesn't tell you anything about how that variable could be measured. So an operational definition tells you how the variable could be measured, and in particular, how the variable was measured in a particular study. So the standard definition might be very similar across different studies, but the operational definition might vary or differ across studies depending on how it was measured, because an operational definition is the specific way in which that variable was measured. So for example, the Freiburg Mindfulness Inventory is often used to measure mindfulness. Now it says it's included in the title of the term inventory. Inventory is just another word for survey. Sometimes you'll see these measures being referred to as scales, the mindfulness scale. Scale is just another word for survey. A scale, an inventory, a survey, these are all survey methodology, examples of survey methodology used to measure a particular construct, typically using Likert scale items. It doesn't always have to include Likert scale items. It might include so by Likert scale, I mean rating some aspect or some characteristic or a level of agreement on a scale from 1 to 7. And we're kind of bombarded with those types of surveys, right? We're rating our preferences all the time in customer satisfaction surveys. Sometimes we might have like a dichotomous forced choice, so yes or no. In other cases, it might be more open-ended, like instead of selecting among a category of age group, you might just, in a more open-ended way, state your age. Or provide comments or feedback that are more open-ended. But when it says inventory or scale, it tends to be specifically Likert scale items. In this example, the Freiburg Mindfulness Inventory is a scale consisting of 14 items in which participants are asked to rate their experience of mindfulness using the last 3 days as the time frame, with 1 being rarely and 4 being almost always on a 4-point Likert scale. Sample items include, I am open to the experience of the present moment. So the operational definition of mindfulness in this case is a 14-item Likert scale survey assessing participants' self-report of mindfulness experience, such as awareness of experience in the present moment. That's a very specific measurement of mindfulness. It's different than the standard definition, but it measures the standard definition. There might be other ways to measure mindfulness. We could sit down and interview a participant with more open-ended questions in a more dialogue format, asking about their experience of their awareness in the present moment, the extent to which they're paying attention to their physical and mental experience in the present moment. This operational definition includes a 14-item Likert scale measurement, and that is the operational definition. So we could be evaluating this measure in terms of its validity and its reliability. And there are multiple types of reliability and validity covered in your textbook, so I won't review each one in detail, but I'll give you a few examples. If this survey has test-retest reliability, if we administer that test multiple times for either the same participants or different participants, if the population characteristics are similar, we should receive roughly the same types of responses every time we administer that survey. That's test-retest reliability. So reliability, another word for reliability is consistency. How consistent are the responses from test to retest to retest? That's test-retest reliability. How consistent are the responses across multiple similar items within the survey itself? That's internal reliability. And some scales or surveys or measures are so internally reliable that the scale has been reduced from, for example, a 10-item or a 12-item scale to a 1-item scale, because the degree of consistency within the scale is very high that that same construct could be measured or operationalized in terms of a 1-item scale. And I provided you with an example of that in the supplemental materials folder, which is Rosenberg's self-esteem measures. There are 2 of them. One of them has multiple items, but the reliability, the internal reliability was so high, there was so much consistency in responses within that survey for each participant that they were able to reduce that survey to 1 item, a single item scale. Now that's rare because most constructs are very complex, so it's very rare to be able to reduce a survey to a single item survey, but from time to time the internal reliability is so high that that's possible. From a perspective of validity, again, this week we're talking about validity in terms of the specific measurement itself. So there are multiple types of validity that you'll be covering this week. One example of validity that we could think about with respect to this mindfulness scale is face validity. Content validity is another one. Criterion validity, and convergent validity or discriminant divergent validity. You can review those in your textbook. Your textbook does a really great job of defining them. Just to touch on them briefly, face validity is the extent to which the measure actually assesses what you think that variable should look like. So does it give an appearance of accurately assessing the variable? Well, I gave you the standard definition of mindfulness, and then I told you about how mindfulness was measured in the scale. Does that scale appear to measure in an accurate way, in a valid way, in a true way? The definition that I provided for you, the conceptual standard definition, yeah, right? I mean, if the standard definition includes awareness of experience in the present moment, that survey is asking participants to self-report their level of awareness of experience in the present moment. It appears to be valid. What about content validity? Content validity is the extent to which the measure contains all of the parts that your theory says it should contain. Well, does that survey have high content validity? We don't know yet because I didn't present to you the entire survey. I only gave you one example of 1 item on the survey. And if you listen to that standard definition again, the moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness cultivated by paying attention in a specific way that is in the present moment and as non-reactively, as non-judgmentally, and as open-heartedly as possible. Well, The type of validity that we're talking about, content validity, is the extent to which all of the different components of the variable are accurately assessed or measured. We heard multiple components in that standard definition. It's not just about awareness of your experience in the present moment. There are other characteristics, other components to the variable. Awareness of experience in the present moment that's non-judgmental. A lot of times we're evaluating ourselves and we're judging ourselves, and a pattern of thinking related to self-judgment can lead to mental health issues. So can we be aware of our experience? Can we be aware of the thoughts that come to mind? Can we be aware of our behavior in the present moment without judging it, without reacting to it, with an open heart or an open mind? Sometimes another word used for open heart is compassionate. Can we display compassion towards ourselves even when we make mistakes, even when we engage in awkward behavior? So even the adjective awkward is a judgment, and that's how automatic that judgmental process is. Those frontal lobes, they're evaluating and judging and planning our next move, right? And so planning our next move sometimes can take our attention away from the present moment into the future, worrying about the future. So mindfulness is a practice of engaging in attentional focus of experience in the present moment, but in a non-judgmental and compassionate way. And we would only say that a measure has high content validity if it's assessing all of the content of that variable, all of the components mentioned in that standard definition. So those are some examples of validity. Criterion validity: does that measure correlate with key behaviors that we would predict would be associated with that variable? Based on previous research and like a whole cultural history associated with mindfulness practice and meditation practice, we might predict that there are certain aspects of mental health and well-being that are correlated with mindfulness. And so if our measure of mindfulness is accurate, if it's valid, it should predict those behaviors that we would expect to be correlated with that measure. So those are a few examples. In the discussion board for this week, I give you another type of scale or survey. It's called the GRIT scale, and you can have an opportunity to take that scale yourself if you choose. It's not required, but just for the fun of it. But you can review that scale, and there's a TED Talk video associated with it. It's not a very long TED Talk video, so you can watch the TED Talk video. It's a presentation given by Angela Duckworth, who created this measurement of grit and is well known for her work on the concept of grit. And I don't want to give you a definition, I'll let her define it for you. So she'll provide, in the TED Talk, she'll provide you with the conceptual or the standard definition of grit. And then you can look at that survey to evaluate it in terms of whether it has certain aspects of validity, such as face validity or content validity, based on the talk that you heard and the definitions that were provided in the talk. You can also listen to the talk to learn about research related to the use of that type of measure to determine whether you think that measure has the potential to be associated with high test-retest reliability. You can also assess the criterion validity based on the TED Talk. Does it appear that that measure is associated with other types of abilities and behaviors that we would predict to be correlated with that measure? And then in your homework assignment, you're going to practice observational method and survey method. And so you're going to read chapter 6 to learn about observational method and survey method, and use the PowerPoint slides handout and use chapter 6 to learn as much as you can about those methods, and do your best to apply those methods in the homework assignment. I really just want you to give it a shot. Okay, you'll get lots of points in your homework assignment if I can see that you put in the effort. And if you have any questions, let me know. But in the observational method, your goal will just be to watch the short video. It's a 3-minute video, and to take as many detailed notes as you can. And there are suggestions in the homework assignment instructions about the kinds of notes that you could be taking. And then once you've taken as many notes as you can, and try to watch the video just once. Try to imagine that you're actually in the experience, so you don't get to play and replay that experience. But that if this was a live experience, you'd only have that period of time to take as many notes as possible. Look at your notes and see if there's anything that jumps out at you that you might want to, if you could measure any variables that emerge out of your observational method by developing a survey, what variables would you measure and what kinds of survey questions would you ask? And the survey can be short. The requirement is a 5-item survey. If you want to develop more items than that, you can, but 5 items is fine. You're gonna be graded according to whether your survey items avoid some of the pitfalls or problems associated with survey method, like leading questions or double-barreled questions. So be sure to review all of the content of your textbook and those PowerPoint slides before you develop your survey items, and in conjunction with developing your survey items. And as long as I can see that you're really putting effort into it and taking a shot at it, you'll get your points. It can be nerve-wracking to practice a method that you've never practiced before, but the only way to learn how to do it is to take a shot at it. So the goal of this is to take a shot at it. This is an introduction to research methods, and so just do your best. This is a first step towards learning how to develop methodology and specific types of measures. And if you have any questions, of course, always email me, contact me. And I did post a supplemental materials folder. You can use the materials in there to help you review key concepts in the textbook to kind of deepen your understanding. It's optional whether or not you want to review those materials, but I think they will help you. And the one last thing I'd like to mention before I sign off is there's a video that I posted. It's a crash course on YouTube, and there are multiple crash courses that are posted on YouTube about psychological constructs and concepts and theories that are pretty engaging. I like those videos. This one's called Measuring Personality, and it gives you a really great understanding of the difference between theory, conceptual definitions, operational definitions, and measures. And as part of the description of the video, I laid out the time course of the video when you can expect to see some of those different concepts emerge in the video. And I encourage you to watch that video to help you, again, deepen your understanding of these concepts, because they're all related to each other. They're all part of a process of engaging in research, a process of developing, designing, and applying empirical research methodology in order to investigate a question that you find interesting. And in the case of the video that I posted, the variable of interest is personality. What is our personality? How do we define it? Throughout history, there have been multiple diverse theories about what personality is. So there have been different types of conceptual or standard definitions about what personality is. And some of those definitions aren't really measurable. So psychologists had to design and develop conceptual definitions that might actually lead to methodology that we could use to measure personality. Is it perfect? I don't know. Personality is a complex construct, but it's something that we all, I think, reflect on. What's my personality? What's this other person's personality like? How can I learn how to interact with this person and get along with this person depending on their personality? We have personality disorders. How can my understanding of personality and what personality is help me to understand personality disorders? For me, those are interesting kinds of questions to ask.